Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, I've got Bryan Charleau joining me, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects in the whole wide world, and that's sales. We're going to talk about sales as a profession, but we're also going to talk about sales in our everyday lives. You know, the fact of the matter is, whenever you're dealing with people and you're trying to convince them of your way of thinking on anything, you are selling. Now, there's good sales and there's bad sales. There's truths about sales and there's myths about sales, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're talking about all of it. So, with that, sit back, please share this with somebody, and here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life experiences and wisdom of people who have been there and done that in terms of finding better in their own lives. Because, you know, sometimes the best path to success is to follow in the footsteps of others who have been there and done that and blaze those paths for us. So today I've got Bryan Charleau with me, and we're going to talk about sales. Now, before don't do it. Stay with me. Hang with me just for a second, because a lot of people go, "Oh, sales? Are you serious? Sales?" Here's the thing. We're going to talk about sales. We're going to talk about sales as a profession. But the fact of the matter is, your whole life is about sales. If you're ever trying to convince somebody of something, you are selling. Sorry. You know, a lot of people have that bias that, and we've all experienced really bad salespeople. We're talking about becoming a really good one. And Bryan has been a salesperson for 15 years, and he's the author of a book called Pitching Sales, a complete guide to becoming a sales professional. Now, that's a sales professional, right? And we're also going to talk about life. We're going to talk about pivots and transitions that we've gone through in terms of finding better. But back to sales, it's all about how to prepare and build foundational skills to become a really great sales professional, and not just learning techniques and methods on how to sell, right? Bryan, welcome to Finding Better.
Well, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it. And I think you hit a lot of good topics on that introduction about how sales is much more than that surface level thought that people might get if they're not within that profession. And I think you did a good job showing that there is more depth to this that I think will help a lot of people out, regardless of what profession they're in.
You bet. It is hugely deep. And I just want to say this one thing as we get started. You know, the world of computers has made us really smart and made us very, very analytical. And I coined a phrase that says, "We've gotten so smart, we've forgotten our heart." And, you know, what I found over almost 40 years of professional sales, 50 years of sales, if you consider my childhood, is that it's all from the heart. It's all from the heart. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that today. So, Bryan, a little bit about your background and what inspired you to write the book on pitching sales.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me here. And it's a good question right off the hop, because I can assure you that the book came out in 2022. In 2020, 29, if you had asked me if I would have written a book, I would have said there's no chance. It had literally not crossed my mind for the first, 8, 9 years of being in this profession. And one of the main reasons is kind of what you touched on in that introduction, and kind of what this podcast is about, where I know you mentioned a lot, where it's to learn, to earn, and then to return.
Right.
Yeah.
Yay. Yep, that's
Yeah,
right.
and that it kind of hits the nail on the head that even though it's not like I'm 40 years in the profession, and at the time I was only about 10 years into it. The topics that I wanted to talk about had a lot to do with people that were entering the sales field,
You bet.
something that I and every other person that's made it 5, 6, 10 years or longer into this profession has gone through. And that first year to a year and a half is such a critical part of development to help understand if you're going to be able to make this a profession instead of a job. And
Yeah.
what I was seeing was, around me as I was developing, coming through, and it almost happened to me, is a lot of very talented, very skilled people were falling to the wayside because they weren't getting the proper training, help, development to pursue this as their career and their profession. And I just felt like there was something with the experience I had gotten, and then also being surrounded by a lot of sales professionals in the industry, gathering information from them, because we've all dealt with a different experience, but there's so many similarities and overcrossing paths that we all faced as salespeople in those first 6 months to a year and a half, that I really felt that knowledge would be so beneficial to people that were entering that might not know where to turn. And that's kind of where I looked at that return aspect and said, if I can write a book that helps, one person, 10 people, 20 people, whoever it got out to, help make this, because I just find this such a fascinating profession, and I'm just very passionate about it. If I can help those people get to that next stage and kind of help make that their profession as well, then it was worth doing. And that's
I
kind of what.
love that. I love it. I love it because the thing is that um, a lot of people get into the sales profession thinking, "Oh yeah, I can do that." It's easy. I mean, you
Yeah.
just got to go out there and sell. And then I mean, there's so many myths, and one of the myths is people buy from people they like. And it's to a certain extent it's true. People buy more from people they trust. But because people think, yeah, I'm a likable person. They're gonna like me. Who doesn't like me? There's a little bit more than that to sales, and to your point, it is a profession. It's a profession, especially if you're going to go into big sales. Now, more and more sales are going online. You can buy all your stuff from Amazon. But when you're talking about the larger sales that require human support and people, uh, there's a lot more to it than just being likable. And unfortunately, and to your inspiration to writing your book, there is not that much training out there, and especially with companies who hire salespeople, you know, other myths include it's just a numbers game. Well, maybe if you're not a sophisticated salesperson, there's just so much out there that folks need to know, and I know that you're teaching some of these additional concepts based on your own experience to help them be successful.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a couple of things. And to be right, just because you're likable doesn't mean people are going to write you a PO. Now, it doesn't hurt, as you mentioned. It's harder to sell to someone who
Absolutely.
doesn't like you. It's not always the best foot to get off on with
And
somebody.
yet both of us have done it.
We've all done it before, because if you're bringing value to the customer and you've
Yeah.
you've taken away their pain points, regardless whether they like you or not, for the better interest of their own business, they will still buy from you if you've done all the proper things that a good salesperson should do.
Now that's
Um,
not to say to be an asshole,
no, no,
right?
not at
And
all.
if you're an
Um,
asshole, you don't have to worry about it.
yeah.
Both Brian and I are telling you up front, the nicer you are, the better the chances you have. But it's not just being likable.
It doesn't hurt. You don't want people buying off you for sympathy. You want them buying off you
Right.
because you've done your job in a professional manner and you've actually helped them and you've bettered their business, you've bettered their interests. That's why you have a win-win scenario within a sales agreement. That's kind of how I look at it. And a couple of things that you mentioned too, which is again one of the inspirations to doing this. When people are entering sales for the first time, a lot of them, if they're not from the profession or ever done in the industry, they do think it's easy. Oh, you knock on enough doors, you call enough people, yeah, you're going to get some sales,
I've
and they
seen
think,
the Girl Scouts outside my grocery store.
right. And it's there's so many factors that go into it. Um, and yeah, some people you can stumble into the right place at the right time in some scenarios. But if you want to look at a probability game, you're a whole lot better at honing your profession and getting better, getting more qualified questions, understanding your customers, a whole list within the sales process than simply, dialing 1,000 numbers a day, because you're going to burn yourself out pretty quickly if you're just relying on probability like that. And then also to touch on your point too about the lack of sales training that is out there, that's a major factor in all this. And the simple reason is because they're literally playing a numbers game when they're hiring people that don't have the experience from the industry before. So what they want to do is they want to overhire and weed out people who don't cut it within their sales organization, because they're not going to spend all their time and resources on someone that's going to quit in 2 months. So
That
they're going
is an amazing insight. That's an amazing insight, for the and especially for those folks out there who are thinking, "Oh yeah, I'll go to work for a company and they'll train me."
to. Mhm,
What Brian just said, maybe so, but a lot of times not. And that's where, you have to do the work. You have to do the work. Brian, one of the themes that over 130 episodes of Finding Better that I'm finding is that we can tell the folks out there everything. Everything. I mean, we can give them the wealth of the world, but if they don't do the work, nothing's going to happen.
mhm,
But the second part of it is that the work is hard, especially when you're just starting off. It's really hard, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, the easier it becomes, and it's like building a muscle. And but to Brian's point, getting off on the right foot with the right principles of what sales is about and why the hell you're there to begin with. It's not just a job for you to make money on in commissions. The whole idea is to help your customer find better. I mean, how's that for a theme of a podcast, right? It's all about you helping your customers find better and solving whatever problems they have. Did I get
mhm.
that right, Brian?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. And the one thing that I really try to tell people, I really think that you're hitting it on an advanced level, right, with your sales experience. And to kind of break it down for somebody who might not be within that profession, which is the hardest thing to understand when you're getting started, is that your growth in sales early has nothing to do with getting a sale. It has nothing to do with it. It's the steps that you take in the progression of the sales process and understanding those fundamentals that people who are good at sales, who have been in this profession for a long time, that you are watching. It's not luck. It's like the fun. It's like how at poker, the good players are always at the final table, even though the cards, you'd think it would come down to luck. It just doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. It's just because they're trained and focused and can see it in so much more detail than a newcomer. It's just the reality of it. So when you are getting in this profession, if you're all you're doing is thinking about getting the sale, which is so hard not to do, especially if you're trying to make money and you're commission based, and you're looking at your future bills that are coming in, you're just out of school and you're eating craft dinner and thinking about your rent payment. It's so hard to disassociate yourself from the sale and actually learn the fundamentals and process that get you to there, that allow that. And that's where that molding is done. Because if I call somebody up and I'm new and it's my first week and I call somebody up and all the stars align and I say, hey, I offer XYZ, and they're like, oh, that's exactly what I'm in the market for and I need that. And you sell it, great. By all means, take what you can get, but that doesn't get you any better at sales. What just happened? It might give you a little bit of confidence. It might actually give you a false sense of confidence, but that's, you know, neither here nor there at the time. But what you're going to learn is sometimes hearing the no's, hearing the objections, and getting stumped, and continuing to move forward, and coming across tangible information that customers who didn't buy give you, kind of callous you and help you to learn those next steps, so that it doesn't become a probability game. You become better at your craft. And again, this doesn't mean that you're manipulating people in any way to buy your product. What you're doing is learning how to solve their problems better by asking the right questions, by finding out if this is the proper item or service for that customer and leading them to the water that you can offer. And doing that over and over again, and that probability just shoots up, and it doesn't become a luck game. It becomes more of a skill on your end, and you're helping more people solve more problems that they have.
Yeah. Um, wow, there's a lot tied into what you just said. Um, luck, you know, I I'm fond of saying sometimes the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. I
It's
mean,
perfect for
you just
it's perfect for so many different professions, but it just relates
right.
in this. It's a square peg and a square hole when it comes to sales. When you say something like that.
Yeah, and it really is so true. In terms of any profession, right? I mean, you look at the champions, you look at sports, you look at anything, you look at the top people in their field in sales. Here you go, guys. I mean, the top salespeople make more money than doctors, anesthesiologists, and lawyers and everybody else out there, right? But you know what? You want to be a champion at sales, you gotta put in the work.
Mhm.
That's just the way it is. And people get attracted to sales because they're like, oh my gosh, look at all the money I can make. Well, take a step back and realize that, yeah, the money is there, but those people didn't just step right into it, right? They are mastering their craft. And, one of the things that chases people away, at least what I found, Bryan, and maybe you can comment on this, is first of all, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, and dealing with objections. And one thing that I tell people as I would train them is just understand an objection is not a no. An objection is not a rejection. An objection is a question. And the better you get at answering questions, the better you're going to get at answering objections. They're the same thing, right? So don't run away from it. Don't fear it. Embrace it. Because, what you're going to find is that when it comes to objections, and everything in life is the 80/20 rule, right? 80% of the people have the same 20%, or 20% of the objections represent 80% of what people are talking about out there. And over time, as you start seeing these patterns, right? Like the poker player, you start seeing the patterns. You start seeing not only patterns in the cards, but in patterns in your competitor's behavior,
Oh yeah,
um, and stuff like
behaviors.
that, right? You start getting better and better and better at it because you're learning more and more and more at it. So, from that perspective, it may be like one of the toughest professions out there to persevere, right? Because it's so easy to walk away
Yeah,
from it saying, oh, this isn't for me.
yeah,
But God,
yeah. There's so many good things you touched on there that honestly, it's a lot of it is in the book to explain to people the reality of sales. That's the biggest thing. I don't pull any punches when it comes to this book, when it comes to the reality of sales. And I talk about Zig Ziglar's. Um, I don't want to butcher the quote too much, but one of it is sales is the easiest low paying job you could have, or it's the hardest high paying job that you can have.
interesting.
And yeah, and what he's kind of getting at, and what you really touched on, um, first thing I tell people as well too when they're getting into this is they're going to see people around them who don't seem like they're working as hard as them, or don't seem to be working as hard. The 10-year, 15-year vets at the office. And I was trying to put into perspective exactly how to discuss that um, phenomenon to new people in sales. And actually, I got a quote sent to me from, or a little blurb sent to me by a really good friend of mine in the profession called Dave Rothenberger, and he essentially summed it up by saying time does not equal money in sales. It's so difficult to come from a job where you clock in and you get a set amount of time, money per hour that you know, and you can balance and you can be a safeguard to knowing what you're going to get. Whereas in sales, there's so many different structures that you can do, which is a topic for another podcast. But essentially, you could be working for below minimum wage for the first year and a half, 2 years of your sales profession or longer, as you build up these this skill set within the
Right.
profession. If you clock into a sales job from 8 to 5 and go about your day and just keep doing 8 to 5 over and over again, putting in, not the bare amount, but a good amount, your progression is going to slow to a snail's pace. This is a job that you need to be taking advantage of time that you're in a car, time that you're in transit, listening to books, listen to podcasts, talking about sales like this. So if you're listening to this right now, you're already on the right path to becoming better, whatever profession you are in. This piece of information where you are, I kind of have a rule because I've in sales, I do outside sales and I'm in the car all the time. During work hours, I am either listening to an audiobook or a podcast. With regards to it, in my off hours now or on a weekend, I will listen to my music and things like that. But I always have something that's engaging me and helping me to learn and keeping things firing throughout my workday. And it's just something you have to do as a someone new to the profession to get better. You're gonna be making less than minimum wage. That's just the reality. If you want to get to the point of that 10, 15, 20-year pro that's in your office that comes in, makes a few phone calls and has their Rolodex that they've already, because you haven't seen that person 20 years ago or 15 years ago who's in the spot as you. I bet you that person was working their butt off to get to where they are now. And that person
Yep.
is their time and money are exponentially the other way now. You have
Yep.
to get there and you're not there yet. So you have to put that time in. You can't look at him and think you can do the same thing and get the same results. It's just not going to happen.
So to add on to what you were just saying, Brian, I'm going to add one more thing.
Mhm.
And that one more thing is get the hell out. Okay? What I mean by that, Brian talked about the 15, 20-year veteran out there. What you see in the office is not what it's about.
Mhm.
If you were to watch that person with his customers, with her customers,
Mhm.
then you'd get an entirely different picture. They're not being paid for being in the office like a lot of you folks are. They're being paid to be out of the office.
Mhm.
And they're out there being revenue generating. They're not, the best salespeople are making the company money. They're not costing the company money. And if
Mhm.
you're in any other part of the company, you're costing the company money.
Mhm.
Hopefully, your productivity is contributing to the company making money, because if you're not, you shouldn't be there.
Mhm.
But sales is direct revenue. Um, so do your podcast, do your studies, do whatever, but get out. My wife, when she first started in her career, and she's the most talented person I've ever known in my life. And she started off with marketing, selling business forms to all the hospitality in Orange County. You can imagine that's a big territory.
Mhm.
And this was back in the mid 80s, where she literally got in her car and made between a minimum of 20, her target was 30 sales calls a day. A day.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't happen anymore. People don't do that, because we've got the internet, we've got Zoom, we're getting into AI, which can do, I mean, it's just crazy all the things it can do, but it's never going to replace you as a salesperson if you're doing this right. And that's a whole nother topic we can talk about.
Mhm.
But getting out there is the key. And every single call she made, she learned something. And in her first year, she became the number one salesperson at NCR in the country.
Mhm.
And and then she moved on and eventually moved to Microsoft, doing all kinds of different things, including being responsible for their entire security network. But anyway, get out, get out there, because there's no better learning than with your customer.
You need tangible information to, if you're going to improve, you need to hear the objections. You need to hear the no's, and you got to hear why they're saying no. You can ask them why they said no. The best, like I read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a great book that talks about the power of no, and kind of how that's where the sales process starts, is with no. And the way he kind of narrates that is no disarms the prospect. They've already said no. The pressure's off of them feeling like they're in this sales process with you, and they're just so much more open to information finding when they've already kind of got there. And again, no doesn't mean no all the time. Sometimes, and
Forever.
you'll pick up when it's a no, no. Like they can be stern. But what it allows you to do is you can ask follow up, especially in the beginning stage. You hear no, and you're like, hey, you know what? That's great, but out of curiosity, is it something about the product? Is it something they'll sit there and talk with you after they've been just and you're just picking up information. And what, like, I always talk about, and it's a big part of the book too, is just the worst case is no. Like, that's, once you realize that's the worst case, they're not going to push you down the stairs after they tell you no. They're not going to, slam something in your face they're just going to say no. And what does that matter now that it's done,
That's
right?
what
Like,
rejection is.
how many times did your wife on 30 calls get told no? Probably 29, and once you can, it, as much as it disarms the prospect, it allows you to kind of lower that anxiety that people get from that fear of failure, that fear of rejection. You're like, oh, the guy told me no, it was no big deal. I
And
went about my day.
yeah, one thing that helped me a lot was, if you don't ask, the answer is no by definition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? I mean, right? I mean, if you don't ask for the business, the answer is no.
Yeah.
So ask. I mean, they may say yes. And
Yeah.
again, there's a lot involved in it, the most important of which is communicating the value that you're bringing to this person.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. It's not just saying, "Hey, I'm from XYZ company. Have you heard of us? Are you interested in buying our product?" That's not how it goes. It's about understanding the customer, what the problem is that they're trying to solve, and coming to them with a potential solution that they'll be thankful for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the missing piece that a lot of people don't understand as they approach a sales job, which becomes a profession, which becomes a career,
Mhm.
is that you are solving problems. You're not making commissions. And so, as Bryan said, the more no's you get, the more you're learning. Oh, he said no. She said no. Okay, what did I learn from that? Okay, I'm not going to do that next time. You adjust, rinse and repeat with a few adjustments, and eventually you start seeing some patterns. And there's no better feeling than a customer saying, "Thank you, you saved my life,"
Yeah.
or
And
or "Thank you, you made me look really, really good, and you helped
it's
me get that
so,
next promotion."
yeah, it's so um poetic sometimes when you can overview a sales process that started with a no, that started with objection after objection, that the person at this on the other end, like, you have to have some perspective of what the other person is feeling at the time too. And it's fair for them to have tough questions. It's fair for them to be skeptical of you if you came up to their, and it's your ability to bring some comfort, bring some professionalism, and then gain trust, that throughout that sales process. And if you think, sometimes it works, sometimes the process goes pretty smoothly and you can gain that trust. You just have a connection. But a lot of the times it's going to take a few meetings. It's going to take a few objections. It's going to sometimes say, hey, you know what? That's a great question. I don't know. Let me get back to you. on that, and then actually do it and continue to earn their trust and answer the questions that they have. And then they might have another one and start to see if they're true objections, if this person really interested in this. And it's almost like a dance that you're playing with that prospect, which, again, this is where the passion comes out in this profession with me, because again, your job, that you are going to, if this person is to use your product or service, that it is going to help them. Like, you've built that faith in yourself and your product and your service that you're doing. And when you are able to get them over that proverbial step where there is trust, professionalism, and a win on both sides, that's, sales at its finest. But it takes time, as we were talking about, to get there. And you have to hear those no's. You have to, like you said, the patterns that develop, you're going to hear the same objection over and over again. It's up to you to understand that objection, understand why customers are asking that and why they're feeling it. And it's up to you to answer that correctly and show that understand their concern, and you're making sure that what you're offering helps that pain point that they're looking for. It's just this dynamic that you need to have with these customers that just doesn't come overnight, which takes that going out and seeing 30 people and getting a little bit better, going out and seeing
So
30 people the next day and getting a little bit better again.
so I want to offer the folks something that will cut a lot of time off of that process.
Mm-hmm.
Months, years off that process. And here's my question that you want to ask yourself. Why are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I mean, you're with a customer. Why are you there? And the answer is not because I want to sell them something.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
not the answer.
Yes.
And the answer is very, very deep. And this is where it gets a little bit advanced. But the idea is, why are you there from the customer's perspective? Why are you there? So, from your perspective, you are there to serve the customer. That's why you're there. But why are you there from the customer's perspective is an entirely different question. The answer to that question is what's going to make you the sale. Okay? And understanding, why is a customer spending 20 minutes with me? Be it on the phone or a Zoom call, whatever. 20 minutes is 20 minutes. And trust me, any customer that's worth having as a customer is a very busy person.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you ask yourself the question, why am I here from the customer's perspective? Now all of a sudden it changes everything. It changes everything. It puts you on their side of the table. And all of a sudden it's like, well, he must have a problem he's trying to solve. I need to ask about that. Well, he may be getting pressured from his superiors to solve a problem. Okay, what's he dealing with? Right? And what that does is that helps you define the value that you're going to provide that person that nobody else, because very few salespeople do this, is going to be able to accomplish. That's how you build the trust. That's one way how you build the trust.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I want to share with you, I'll impart with you, is sales is not a transaction. Okay, you ought to write this down. Sales is not a transaction. Sales is a relationship. Because, if you do it right, that customer will buy from you over and over and over and over again. And if you think of the customer not as a transaction, but as a lifetime value, in terms of how much is that customer going to be worth to me over the lifetime that I have a relationship with them, then all of a sudden it goes from interesting to really exciting. And not only because you have the opportunity to make a whole lot more money, but because you are building an amazing relationship. And that's that. And Brian, that's where the reward from sales comes from for me.
Yep.
Is the money's there, but if you chase the money, um, you're going to be running pretty hard.
Yeah, and like honestly, it just summed up so perfectly is that if you're there to make a sale for you, you're not going to make it in this profession very long. You are going to get weeded
Well
out, or
said.
you're going to have poor numbers. Whatever the case is, you most likely will not be in the sales profession long, or you're going to have to move a lot to keep making one-time transactions if that is your mindset. And that's not the type of salespeople that we try to build up in any industry. And and I was looking at this. If you're not sure if you are doing the right thing for your customer, if you are having an internal conflict, ask yourself, if I run into this person on the street a week from now,
Ouch.
am I going to duck out of the way, or am I going to go up and say hi? And if the answer
Yep,
isn't go up and say hi to that person, then
you're
you
doing
are
it.
doing
You're
you're
doing it
not
wrong.
doing it right. 100%. And it's as simple as that. If you're not sure, say, what happens if I run to this person next week? And if again, that should be as clear an answer as you can get. Are you going to come up? You should be able to shake their hand and say, "Hey, how's everything going?" And if something isn't going right, go help them. Just it's as simple as that. When you break it all down, you are here for your customers. You are here to build relationships. You are here for the long term. And that's again, I always say that's when you know that you are doing this as a profession and in a career instead of a job, is once you
Right.
cross that threshold where you're relationship building and you're not in it for that immediate sale in front of your face. You're there for that long-term gain. And that's when it becomes this, this career that you can look forward to and learn from and grow in, and all the things that you've talked about. You just hit the nail on the head with all that, and just perfectly.
And understand, what Brian, the reason I giggled a little bit while you were talking, because you said, you know what, if you're in it for yourself and in it for the money, you're going to be moving around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happens in any relationship? If you are in that relationship just for you, you're going to be moving around a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And and that's why I said at the very beginning that life is sales. If you're dealing with people, you are selling at some point in time. And but it's just such an amazing opportunity if you look at it right. If you look at it right. And like I said, I was in sales for 40 years in high tech sales and leadership. And it was amazing. It was amazing.
Mhm.
So
And just
yeah,
to kind of touch on that, if you're again, I really think that this information is so universal for people that are entering any industry, any field. There's going to be some overlap on this. And one of the biggest things I get when I try to get to their head that it's the growth is not coming from getting the next sale. It's understanding how you get the sales and understand the sales process and those steps. And I always talk about, again, a universal fact is finding a mentor, either within the relationship, within the profession, whatever it might be. And it's like, well, how do I choose? And what I tell them, and it goes back to what you said about get moving, get out there, knock on doors and all those things. I was like, if you think sitting around the office twiddling your thumbs, some 20-year vet, like you said, who's got things to do and their own numbers to hit and their own um, family to feed and everything that comes with it, is just going to come up and say, "Oh, hey, I noticed you weren't doing anything over here. Can I help you?" No, what they're going to be looking for is somebody who's out there failing, who's out there falling forward, who's out there being told no, who's out there hearing objections,
who's
who's out
hustling?
there putting themselves and their ego aside and hearing those rejections and hearing those no's and coming to them and said, "Hey, this is what happened. How do you think I could do better next time? Hey, this is what I'm finding, I'm struggling with. What do you?" That's the type of people that they want to help. That's when they see themselves in you and want to help and see you succeed and grow with you and take you under their wing. It's not the guy twiddling their thumbs taking an extra 30 minutes at lunch. And
Yeah,
you
you don't
have to
want to learn
separate
from that guy
yourself.
anyway.
Exactly. And these
Yeah.
guys don't want to waste their time on someone who's not going to they don't have enough time in the day to be teaching you and then just having you go back and sit in the corner again. They need if they're going to put the time and invest it in you, you have to be doing the work yourself too. And that's when you find yourself a really good true mentor. They usually find each other.
So here's another rule. If you're sitting there looking at the phone, waiting for the phone to ring, do something. Okay? If you find yourself going, what do I do? Do something. Pick
Mhm.
up the phone, do whatever you got to do. Do some research, but first and foremost, you got to get out there. Get the hell out,
Yeah. I
right?
always say you'll
And
never
that's the
win a staring
best advice
contest
I
with a
can give you.
phone.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to take action. And it's
Mhm.
those people who are going to take action and are going to continuously sharpen their axes and continuously work to be better at it that are going to become the champions. It's no different than anything else.
Mhm.
And yeah. So uh, there's a lot to learn, and we just kind of scratched the surface.
Mhm.
Um, one of the things, Brian, that I am working on is I'm working on kind of an advanced sales program,
Mhm.
and it's all about sales in the age of AI. And a lot of people are concerned that AI is going to take over their jobs everywhere. Be it doctors, be it lawyers, be it engineers, be it scientists, whatever. And AI will take over the low-hanging fruit. There's
Yep.
no question about it. But this sales is one profession where relationships matter supremely, especially when you're talking about big ticket sales. And so um, uh, the opportunity is going to be there. And for those of you who might be wondering, is sales potentially an opportunity with longevity? I'll say unequivocally yes. And the other part of it that I'll say is that what? As long as you're making money for your company, they ain't gonna fire you.
Nope. Nope.
I mean, remember that, right? If you are revenue generating, you're gonna be tough to let go of.
Yep.
And somebody and if they let go of you, do you think another company will want to pick you up if you're generating absolutely. So, for a whole bunch of reasons that Brian and I just talked about, if you're thinking about sales, um, go for it, but do it right, and don't
Have
don't don't walk into
realistic
it thinking it's easy.
the best thing is to get realistic expectations of what the profession is,
And we
because
just kind of
that's not
gave you
just
some.
I hope so, because it's not to scare anyone away. It's just to say that it's not easy. It doesn't just fall in your lap. You have to work for it. But that should be anything. And if you're not willing to do that, not only is sales not the right profession for you, a lot of things aren't.
Yeah,
That's just as real. There
that's
are
right. That's
things,
life. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
there
right.
are things that
That's
you can
right.
go check in and check out of, and that's fine. But you're going to become stagnant in what you do. And again, the beauty about sales is you can, like I always say, you can give yourself a raise the next day in sales. And that's what I love about it. You can read a book, you can listen to this podcast. Maybe there's someone listening to this podcast that's in sales or starting, and they go apply any of these things tomorrow and get a sale. They just gave themselves a raise overnight. They didn't have to go to school for 2 years. They just listened to an hour podcast.
Yeah,
That's
that
if that doesn't thrill you and get your blood flowing, then this might not be the profession for you. Anyone can succeed in this if they put the work in, but that's the kind of stuff that just gets me going, and why I think it's such an enticing profession if you
if
do it the right way.
like Brian said, if that doesn't get you going, don't think about
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it really is. I mean, I tell people all the time, you want to raise, go sell something.
Yeah.
And that is and for that reason, to me, sales is massively empowering because you want to make more money, go sell more. I mean,
Mhm.
it's you're not dependent on your boss to give you a raise. It's all about you and it's all about your efforts and it's all about sharpening your skills.
Mhm.
And so that's why I love sales so much, is because I had my destiny kind of in my own hands for my entire career.
Yep. Yep.
It's a pretty cool place to be. All right, Brian, closing comments.
Oh, it's the biggest thing I would say, depending on, like I said, when it comes to the audience that's listening to this, even if you're not in the sales profession or not looking to get into it, you can apply these things to whatever you're doing and use this to whether it's you've had ideas of starting a side business, whether you've had ideas of writing a book. I wrote a book and 5 years ago I wouldn't have told you it was going to happen. I just kind of found something that I was passionate about and doing. And this might be the work you're in right now. It might be a side hustle you're thinking about doing. It might be a new job you've just started in any topic. Use that drive and the passion that we talked about, the action that we talked about. This is universal stuff. It just happens to be that we're from the sales profession that we're kind of pinpointing it to, but this can be used anywhere. And I encourage you to do so, because that's what's gonna create that next action. Action creates more action. I always say that too, in a sense that once you get the ball rolling, keep that momentum going and use this information. It's just to help your own career and your own personal life. I think it's all very relative.
It's really interesting. Part of what part of the message that I got from what you just said is that, sales skills are universal. They
Mhm.
apply to everything. But the thing that makes sales different is that those universal principles are made more acute in sales
Mhm.
when
Yeah,
you do it as a profession. And I'll just leave you guys with this. And this is something that I've had many, 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 many people write down and ask me to repeat again whenever I'd speak in front of very, very large audiences. And here it is. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
love it.
Okay. And remember that you're there to serve the customer. You're there to add value to the customers, not the other way around. So, so yeah, it's all about heart. Don't be
Mhm.
so smart that you forget your heart.
Mhm.
Bring the heart back. Okay.
I love it.
And for those of you who might be interested in what I'm doing, which is amazingly cool with regard to these courses I'm coming up with and master classes, subscribe to this podcast. Okay. And we'll keep you informed with what we're doing, because it is such a cool topic. And you can add value to a lot of people's lives, one way or the other. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, with that, Bryan, thank you for joining me. Again, folks, the name of the book is Pitching Sales, a complete guide to becoming a sales
Mhm.
professional. Okay. And Bryan, I love you, brother. Thank you for joining me. Folks out there, I love you. God bless you. Please share this, especially with folks that you know of who are going into sales, because we talked about a lot of really great things. Okay. So, with that, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye.